Water, the source of all life. Water, our most important natural resource. The coming century will see crucial battles over water that will affect the lives of people everywhere.
Water is one of our most abundant resources. 70% of the earth is water. But of that 70%, only 3% is fresh water. And of that 3%, only 8/10,000ths is renewable, available fresh water for human use. And when we take a look at our forested landscapes in the United States, 1/3 of the United States is forested, but 2/3 of the runoff comes off of the forested landscapes. In fact, the cleanest water in the United States flows off of our forested lands and our national forests. Now, I'm one that grew up in northern Wisconsin's beautiful lake country, the Chesapeake National Forest, and never ever did I think I'd see a time where water, or better yet, a shortage of water would be a problem. But if we take a look at not only the desert Southwest, but in many parts of the country, we see water shortages, water problems, runoff problems, and it's really all linked to the way we manage the land.
We have destroyed just about all of the natural habitat here in the Los Angeles area in our effort to get rid of water, to get rid of stormwater. Over the years, we have paved over the landscape. As much as 80% of the land is now covered with buildings, roofs, roads, streets, parking lots. And as a result, the natural hydrology of the landscape has been changed dramatically. There's no room for the water to soak into the ground naturally. And this is what we're trying now to figure out ways to restore all over the watershed.
Because these watersheds have been so fundamentally altered, Los Angeles is not able to retain its seasonal rainfall and is forced to import water from hundreds of miles away. The Angleles National Forest was specifically created to control flooding and provide a stable water supply for Southern California. 30 to 40% of the drinking water for the Los Angeles Basin now comes from the Angleles National Forest. By managing the urban watershed as a whole, we can increase that percentage and reduce the dependence on imported water.
The Los Angeles River, which was really the life source for the development in Southern California today, is a concrete lined ditch. The vision is to bring that river system back, to bring riparian species back, to widen the river, so we have a natural floodplain and we have native species, and that we bring back a river system, a real river system, instead of the concrete line channel that we have today. Well, the Forest Service is involved in the community of Los Angeles, creating pocket parks, riparian corridors. We're funding grants for different community groups to do these plantings. When we bring back medians, when we plant more trees, the whole system connects to itself. We're creating more jobs, we're creating livable communities, and we're maintaining our water supply.
The good news is the Forest Service has the science, it has the systems, it has the ecosystem management perspective. It has developed a unique ability amongst agencies to bring communities together and manage stakeholder input and stakeholder process. That's critical, and it's the only agency I know that has actually made that part of the culture.
It makes more sense to utilize what we have here more efficiently. And this is what we need to be doing in Southern California. And if we can do it here in Southern California, you can do it any place.
I often refer to the national forests as the headwaters of the nation. 80% of the rivers and streams in the United States start on national forest lands. And if you think about the terrain, it's really easy to understand. Much of the bottomlands was developed initially, became ranches, became farms, or agricultural crops. Today are urban developments. But if we take a look at our mountain ranges, we really see the arterial system of the United States.
The high country became the public lands under the stewardship of the Forest Service. The Northern Rockies provide a great illustration of how much of our water flows from our national forest lands.
This is Lemhi Pass. It's located on the Continental Divide on the border between the states of Idaho and Montana. Water which falls in this area has the potential to go either east and flow into the Missouri and Mississippi River systems and ultimately to the Atlantic Ocean, or west into the Salmon River and into the Columbia system and ultimately into the Pacific Ocean. The combined area of these two watersheds is better than 3/4 of the United States. So water that originates in this area and flows through these two huge river systems will commingle with water from over 3/4 of the country. It's the largest watershed area for any two systems just about anywhere.
If we take a look at what forests do for us with relation to water, it's just phenomenal, because the function of watersheds and the function of forests is really to catch, store, and release water over time.
The Forest Service objective of restoring and maintaining ecosystem health has accrued watersheds.
Watershed management has been part of the Forest Service mission from the beginning. At the time the West was developing, there were needs for all kinds of resources that the National Forest System could provide. There was a great deal of need for lumber and wood fiber. There was a need for grazing cattle on rangeland. There was a need to develop the mineral resources that are in the national forests. All of those things were ongoing at the same time and in an emphasis of a developing country.
We've learned over the years that the quality of water is determined by all that goes on within the watershed. Agriculture, industry, and urban development each have their impacts. To see their effects over time, we'll look eastward to the Chesapeake Bay. This is an area with a long history of development and use. The national forests in the east are a patchwork of lands that had been heavily abused. By the late 1800s, less than 30% of this watershed remained in forested lands. Much of it had been cut over and burned for fuel, for industry, and for agriculture. Watersheds were devastated, and the rivers changed forever. In the late 20th century, industrial growth was a big part of the Bay watershed. Factories, along with intensive farming and urban development, changed the landscape dramatically.
The work going on here in the Chesapeake Bay now is just phenomenal, as people are coming together in an unprecedented way to really focus on water quality, the productivity of the largest estuary in the United States.
The Chesapeake Bay watershed is vast, 64,000 square miles. It stretches from New York to Virginia, West Virginia to Delaware, and is home to more than 14 million people. By the 1970s, really, citizens and scientists agreed that the bay was in trouble. Excessive pollutants, mainly nutrients and sediment, but some toxic pollutants as well from industry, were harming the bay in a variety of ways. What we try to do is bring people together to find the right players that can address a certain problem, and then try to apply some solutions on a watershed scale.
The challenge is to make all this real for people, because it seems big, it seems distant, and I think one of the things we've really succeeded in doing here in the Chesapeake Bay is bringing the issue close to home so that people feel a sense of involvement, they feel that what they do can make a difference. We're trying to organize people in their own communities around their own small watersheds. One of the things I think we've learned here in the Bay region is that the Bay is the sum of its parts. There's a lot of small watersheds, all of which affect and ultimately determine the fate of the Chesapeake Bay.
One of the efforts the Forest Service has been involved in is a major initiative, Watershed Wide, to try and restore forests along our streams, rivers, and shorelines. These riparian forests are incredibly important in terms of the health of our streams and aquatic habitats, but also can serve a valuable role in improving water quality by buffering pollutants that may come from our adjacent land uses like agriculture or urban areas.
This is Yellow Branch. It's a tributary to the Little Gunpowder Falls, and what we've done here is put up fencing to keep the livestock from entering into the stream, and we planted about 450 trees per acre and put tree shelters on them to create a forest buffer.
The scope of this project is enormous. Throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed, the partner agencies and organizations will plant 2,010 miles of riparian forest buffers by the year 2010. It will take hard work and cooperation to see this project through to completion, but we are seeing that we can make a difference.
Water is probably the most important substance we have. In fact, if we don't touch water every day, or almost every day, we've got big problems. We depend upon it. It's important for drinking, transportation, all the things that water has done for us as a human society. And then when you connect water and forests, it begins to paint a wonderful picture of why natural resources and forest management is important.
It all comes back to watershed management. Keeping more water in the Los Angeles Basin, protecting the high country and headwaters of our nation, and working across boundaries to restore our great waterways. Water is such a valuable commodity, and the Forest Service plays a vital role in protecting this national resource.